Amara woke before the sun had fully risen. The faint gray light creeping through the curtains painted soft shadows across her bedroom walls. For a moment, she lay still, staring at the ceiling, trying to steady the restless thoughts swirling in her mind. The world had changed overnight. Only a few days earlier, her story had been nothing more than a quiet secret buried deep inside her chest, something she carried silently through the hallways of school and the narrow streets of her neighborhood. But now that secret had slipped into the open, whispered first by a neighbor, then written down by a journalist, and finally released into the endless current of the internet. People were reading it, talking about it, sharing it. The thought made her stomach twist. She slowly pushed herself out of bed and walked toward the small mirror hanging beside her wardrobe. For a moment she hesitated before lifting the sleeve of her blouse slightly. The fading bruise along her wrist was still there, though the deep purple had begun turning yellow around the edges. She quickly pulled the sleeve back down, as if even the mirror shouldn't be allowed to see. Outside, the neighborhood was already waking up. The distant rumble of motorcycles drifted through the window, along with the muffled voices of vendors setting up their stalls along the street. It sounded normal, almost comforting, yet Amara couldn't shake the strange feeling that everything was somehow different now. She dressed quietly and left the house without speaking much. The walk to the bus stop felt longer than usual. Every passing glance from strangers made her heart beat a little faster, as if anyone might suddenly recognize her face from the articles spreading online. When she reached the bus stop, two girls were already sitting on the wooden bench. Their heads were close together, both staring at the glowing screen of a phone. As Amara sat down a short distance away, she tried to ignore the way their whispers suddenly grew quieter. A moment later, one of the girls gasped softly. "Wait, this is the girl from the article." Amara's fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. The second girl leaned closer to the phone. "Are you serious?" "I think she goes to our school." Amara lowered her gaze quickly, pretending to search through her bag, though she couldn't hear anything except the pounding of her own heartbeat. Maybe they were talking about someone else. Maybe she was imagining things. Just then, the bus arrived, its doors creaking open with a tired sigh. Amara stood quickly and climbed inside, taking a seat near the window. She kept her eyes fixed on the passing streets as the bus rattled toward school, watching buildings slide past in a blur, while the uneasy weight in her chest refused to fade. When she arrived at school, the atmosphere felt strangely electric. Small clusters of students were gathered around the courtyard, many of them staring down at their phones. The quiet hum of whispered conversations drifted through the air, punctuated by the occasional burst of surprise or laughter. Amara tried to laugh normally, but she could feel eyes following her. Then she saw it. Pinned to the large notice board near the entrance was a bright orange sheet of paper that immediately caught her attention. Something about the bold letters printed across it made her step slow. Her heart dropped as she read the words. "Justice for Amara." For a moment, the courtyard seemed to spin around her. The flyer called for people to stand against silence and speak out against abuse. Her name was written there plainly, impossible to ignore. Students had already gathered around it, some taking photos while others whispered to each other. Amara felt heat rush to her face as she quickly turned away, her mind racing. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected strangers to carry her story like a banner. She hurried toward the school building and slipped into her classroom, grateful to find it mostly empty. Only Lena sat by the window, sunlight spilling softly across her desk. Lena looked up immediately. The concern in her eyes deepened the moment she saw Amara's expression. "You saw the flyer, didn't you?" she asked quietly. Amara nodded, sinking into the seat beside her. "They know," Lena replied gently, "but not everyone." "My name is on it," Amara said, her voice trembling slightly. "Everyone will know soon." Lena rested a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Amara wasn't so sure. Throughout the morning, the tension followed her like a shadow. Students whispered when she passed through the hallways. Some stared openly, while others quickly looked away when she met their eyes. A few seemed sympathetic, but many simply looked curious, as if her life had suddenly become a story they were watching unfold. By lunchtime, the whispers had grown louder. When Amara stepped into the courtyard again, she immediately noticed a small group of students gathered near the school gate. At first, she thought they were simply talking, but then she saw the flyers in their hands, the same bright orange papers. They were holding them high, their voices rising above the usual school noise. Silence protects abusers. Truth deserves to be heard. Amara froze where she stood. The protest wasn't large, but it was loud enough to draw attention from every corner of the courtyard. Some teachers watched nervously from a distance, while other students lifted their phones to record the moment. Amara felt overwhelmed by the strange mix of emotions rushing through her chest. Fear, gratitude, confusion, all tangled together in ways she couldn't fully understand. She hadn't asked for this, yet here it was. As she watched the small crowd chanting near the gate, something caught her attention. At the back of the group stood a tall figure wearing a dark hoodie. Unlike the others, this person wasn't shouting or holding a sign. They simply stood there quietly, observing everything with an unsettling stillness. Amara frowned slightly. Something about them felt familiar. She narrowed her eyes, trying to see their face more clearly as the crowd shifted around them. For a brief moment, the hood slipped back just enough for the sunlight to reveal their features. Her breath caught in her throat. She knew that face, but it made no sense. That person wasn't supposed to be here. They looked directly at her, as if they had been waiting for her to notice them. A faint smile touched their lips before they slowly turned and disappeared into the moving crowd. A cold shiver ran through Amara's body. Lena noticed immediately. "Amara, what is it?" Amara's voice felt distant even to herself. "I know that person." "Who?" Amara kept staring at the place where the stranger had vanished. Her heart was pounding harder than ever. Because if she was right, the past she had tried so desperately to escape was no longer hiding in the shadows. It had just stepped back into her life, and this time it wasn't alone. Somewhere behind her, a student suddenly shouted in surprise. "Everyone look at this." Several people gathered as the student lifted their phone, showing a video that had just begun spreading online. The footage was blurry, clearly recorded in secret, but the location was unmistakable. Amara's stomach dropped as she recognized the familiar walls. It was her house, and the voice echoing faintly in the background belonged to her uncle.